3 years after the end of the Second World War, becoming a musician was the last thing anybody could dream of being, especially for a career. However, on December the 3rd, 1948, one John Michael Osbourne would be delivered to Earth, presumably by Satan himself, to fulfill his evil destiny. He came to be known as the Prince of Darkness, or just Ozzy to you and I. His father once told him, "I've got a feeling about you, John Osbourne. You're either going to do something very special, or you're going to go to prison." And he was right. Ozzy ended up in prison before he even reached 18 years of age. He tried his luck at being a shoplifter, stealing things from a local store in the hope he could sell them down the local pub for a quick buck. But it didn't exactly go to plan. On my third attempt, I managed to nick some shirts. I even had the bright idea to wear a pair of gloves, like a true professional. The only problem was that one of the gloves was missing a thumb, so I left perfect prints all over the place. The cops came to my house a few days later and found the gloves and my pile of swag. A thumbless glove, eh? The copper goes to me as he slaps on the cuffs. Not exactly Einstein, are we? For this expertly planned out crime, Ozzy received 3 months in prison. When he got out, he tried a more honest but ultimately mind-numbing living by working in factories and various other jobs. While some of his family were Catholic, they weren't exactly devout. No Osbournes ever went to church, although Ozzy did attend the Church of England Sunday school. Didn't do me much good. All those mornings spent learning Bible stories and drawing pictures of the baby Jesus. I don't think the vicar would be proud of his ex-pupil, put it that way. The Osbournes were absolutely a working class family. Ozzy had several siblings, all living under the same tiny roof, and it wasn't exactly a glamorous or affluent area to grow up in. Very limited options in the way of a career path, and overall, just a bleak environment to be. Back then, trying to get a job in the music industry was just as ridiculous as becoming an astronaut. Of course, heavy metal didn't even exist yet either. You had Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and Elvis bringing rock and roll and blues to the world during the 1950s, but it would be 4 clean-cut boys from Liverpool, England, that would really capture Ozzy's imagination for becoming a rock star. Then the Beatles happened. All of a sudden, these 4 mop-top scousers were all over the radio and telly. Using my last paycheck from the job at the Lucas plant, I bought their second LP with the Beatles. A light went on in my head when I heard that record. It just sucked me in. Lennon and McCartney's harmonies were like magic. They took me away from Aston and into this fantasy Beatle world. I couldn't stop listening to those 14 songs. This was a huge turning point for Ozzy. It was the first time he thought a working class kid like himself could really do something with his life. So his next task was simple. He had to find a band. Ozzy started to put up adverts in local music shops looking for a band. Eventually, he would end up joining Bill Ward, Tony Iommi, and Geezer Butler to form Black Sabbath. The name for the band was of course taken from the 1963 horror film Black Sabbath. At the time, Black Sabbath had no idea they would be responsible for developing arguably the most iconic musical genre of all time. And Ozzy Osbourne had no idea he would become the Prince of Darkness, snort ants, almost die, become a reality TV star, and bite a bat's head clean off. A stark contrast from the early days of Black Sabbath. They were constantly all broke, living off alcohol, and spent most of their time getting stoned. As we all know, for Ozzy and the rest of Sabbath, 1970 would be a pivotal moment, not just in their lives, but for all music. Black Sabbath's debut record would be released via Vertigo Records in the UK and Europe, and Warner Brothers in the United States. Released on Friday the 13th, 1970, it would peak at number 8 some weeks later, officially launching Black Sabbath and heavy metal into the mainstream. Much to the surprise of Black Sabbath themselves, and although Ozzy didn't know it yet, this was his first step towards becoming the Prince of Darkness. Between 1980 and 1978, Ozzy Osbourne would record 8 studio albums with Black Sabbath, Paranoid being one of the most well-known. aside from the debut, of course. And Sabotage, released in 1975 featuring Symptom of the Universe, is another standout record. A riff that every heavy metal fan should be well aware of. Ozzy had seen incredible success with Sabbath during this time period, quite literally topping album charts all around the world. However, his love for excess, coupled with a crippling substance addiction, almost buried him, quite literally. It was Bill who told me I was fired. The date was the 27th of April, 1979, a Friday afternoon. We were doing some rehearsals in LA and I was loaded, but then I was loaded all the time. It was obvious that Bill had been sent by the others because he wasn't exactly the firing type. Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath because apparently he was doing too many drugs.
Rock and roll!
He felt betrayed and heartbroken. He also thought that was it. His career was over. His rock star dream had been shattered. This was without doubt a very dark time in Ozzy's life, and he turned to addictions to numb the pain. I didn't see daylight for months. My dealer would come over and give me some blow or some pot. I'd get booze delivered from Jill Turner's up on the Sunset Strip. I was eating so much pizza and drinking so much beer. I had bigger tits than Jabba the Hutt's fat older brother. This is when Ozzy would meet Sharon. Over the years, Ozzy has stated many times that if it wasn't for Sharon, he'd be dead. At first though, she was just Ozzy's manager. Sharon was managing me virtually single-handed when we did the Blizzard of Oz tour. It was the first time in my career that I'd ever seen anyone plan things so carefully before we even started. She said, "We can go two ways, Ozzy. We can open for a bigger act like Van Halen, or we can headline smaller venues. I think we should headline smaller venues because that way you'll always have sold-out shows, and when people see sold-out signs, they want to go." You could say this turning point in Ozzy's story saved his life. He was now on his way to recording his first solo record and was also about to work with one of the most iconic guitarists of all time, Randy Rhoads. The funny thing is, I don't think Randy really ever liked Black Sabbath much. He was a proper musician. I mean, a lot of rock and roll guitarists are good, but they just have one trick, one gimmick, so even if you don't know the song, you go, oh, that's so-and-so. But Randy could play anything. His influences ranged from Leslie West to jazz greats like Charlie Christian and classical guys like John Williams. He didn't understand why people were into Iron Man because he thought it was so simple a kid could play it. I think we can all agree that Ozzy being fired from Black Sabbath was absolutely a blessing in disguise, and in 1980 he would release his first solo record, Blizzard of Oz. This was a particularly special record for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it marked the start of Ozzy's solo career, which would become iconic in of itself, but also it introduced the world to Randy Rhoads, now one of the most revered and innovative guitarists within heavy metal. Rhoads was previously a member of Quiet Riot, but of course they didn't exactly reach the same level of fame as Ozzy during his solo career. Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley were released as singles and essentially gave Ozzy the instant success as a solo artist he needed to replace the pain of being ousted from Black Sabbath. This also puts us on the Ozzy timeline at just 2 years away from the now infamous bat incident. But we've heard of this a million times before. Someone threw a bat on stage, Ozzy didn't know it was real, and crunch, off came the head. And this followed him throughout his entire career, including this video. Yeah, sorry Oz. One Ozzy incident that often gets overlooked is being arrested in Texas. In 1982, he decided to pee all over the Alamo Cenotaph Monument, a 60-foot tall monument commissioned in 1939 to commemorate those that died during the Battle of the Alamo in 1836. He also chased chickens around his back garden with a samurai sword, stripped naked in front of record executives in Germany, bit the head off a dove, and almost killed his wife Sharon by choking her. So he wasn't just making a name for himself via his music, he was pretty much terrorizing any country he went to. But as the saying goes, any publicity is good publicity. And for Ozzy, this was certainly the case. His crazy personality and wild antics earned him the title the Prince of Darkness. It's a name I didn't wake up one morning and go, you know what, I'm going to call myself. It started as a joke name, really. I'm okay with it, you know? You know, it's better than being called an asshole. Before the new millennium dawned upon us, Ozzy had released 8 studio albums with Black Sabbath and 7 studio albums under his solo name, Ozzy Osbourne. Blizzard of Oz, Ultimate Sin, No More Tears, the list goes on. And then out of nowhere, he became a reality TV star.
Press this one button and a shower starts. I'm going, what is this?
Although MTV started out as music television back in the 80s, where they actually played music videos, it would turn to reality TV as soon as the early 1990s. The Real World would be the first show they would produce of this nature. It basically just followed a bunch of random people living together. The Osbournes, though, would take quite a different approach, as it would follow, well, the Osbournes. Sharon, Kelly, Jack, and, of course, Ozzy would be the main focus of this show, along with about 500 dogs the family owned in their mansion.
Fucking Dr. Doolittle's fucking house here.
The debut episode aired in 2002, and it was called There Goes the Neighborhood. And looking back on it now, they could not have chosen a better title, as during the next few years of filming and airing the show, the Osbournes quite literally turned their neighborhood upside down and caused absolute chaos. From setting their kitchen on fire to having wild house parties, shooting guns and almost each other, fighting with neighbors, dealing with multiple police visits, and then of course, Ozzy.
Piece of wood and whack the dog round the back of the head with it.
Some of the most iconic moments from the show ended up being Ozzy screaming at dogs, screaming at vacuum cleaners, screaming at phones ringing, and having absolutely no idea how to work a remote control or really what was going on.
Turn the fucking thing off, it's driving me mad, man.
And of course, drinking, getting stoned, wondering where his beer went, and eating burritos. The Osbournes not only gave us a look into the life of a rock star, it also showed us a side to Ozzy Osbourne that previously only his family had ever seen. Whilst it certainly did confirm that he was indeed a little bit crazy, absolutely indulged in a variety of substances, which we all knew, but it also showed the world that he was a very loving and caring father and husband. Well, apart from when he was trying to kill his wife and kids, that is. And I think what the show really highlighted was Ozzy's love for his wife Sharon. He depended on her for everything, and I often wonder if he would have even made it to see the 80s without her. It's a miracle he lived to the age he did. Ozzy was basically my last hero. He was by no means a picture of perfection when it came to behavior or morals, but I always believed his heart was in the right place. When he played a show, he played it for his fans, not for fame. He just wanted to make people happy, and for being the Prince of Darkness, he sure did bring a lot of light to the world. Ozzy suffered from several health issues over the years. In 2003, he was in a quad bike accident and ended up breaking his neck. This would ultimately lead to him undergoing multiple surgeries and years of pain. At one point, he wasn't even able to walk. He was also diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in 2003. In my back, the 2 discs and the muscles on my shoulders have separated from my skeleton, and that's why I lean forward, as it's like gravity is bringing my head forward. I can't believe I've come to the end of it. It's been 5 years of absolute hell for me and the family. It is going to be the final surgery because I can't do it anymore. It's alright, I've had that much surgery in the last few years that it's like going for a haircut now. My feet feel like a brick's tied to them. Throughout all of this time, the only thing Ozzy ever wanted to be doing was going on tour and playing for his fans. This is what he truly loved to do in life, but he even had to cancel his 2019 No More Tours 2 tour because of his deteriorating health, and he was devastated about this. This is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to share with my loyal fans. Never would I have imagined my touring days would end this way. My singing voice is fine, however, after 3 operations, stem cell treatments, endless physical therapy sessions, and most recently, groundbreaking Cybernix HAL treatment, my body is still physically weak. It got so bad that at one point I thought, oh God, please don't let me wake up tomorrow morning. Ozzy continued to work on music though, and in my opinion, released 2 of his best ever solo records during the late stages of his career. Ordinary Man in 2020, and Patient Number 9 in 2022. As we all know, Ozzy played a final show with Black Sabbath just some weeks ago. Due to his health, he had to sit down for the entire performance in a pretty epic Black Throne, but still gave everything he had for us, the fans. And now looking back, this was Ozzy's final goodbye. I truly believe he held on just to do this one final show. On July the 22nd, 2025, Ozzy Osbourne sadly passed away after suffering from a heart attack. He was 76 years of age. His contributions to music, heavy metal, and the lives of millions of people around the world will be remembered, I'm sure, for decades to come. Rest in peace, Ozzy, the Prince of Darkness. We love you.